When shooting the moon, Huawei can expose both the overexposed moon and the underexposed buildings correctly. For photography enthusiasts, this is pretty cool. When photographing neon lights, Honor's lights look the most natural, while Huawei's lights show noticeable color shift. We've also organized these sample photos into a cloud document, with the layout prepared in the description or comment section. You can go directly to the document for high-definition original images. If this helps you, please consider liking, bookmarking, and sharing for support. While iPhone's photo performance isn't outstanding, it remains the brightest when it comes to video comparisons. We tested 4K 30 frames per second video recording in a very low light LX environment. The Android phones showed some noise and blurry spots. Huawei had some color shift, while only iPhone showed solid, clean details, with almost no noticeable noise or fluctuation. Then we added a small yellow light from the side to simulate sunset. The light meter was directed at the lens, about 25 lux of brightness. Everyone's performance improved significantly, but iPhone remained the best in detail and stability. Oppo looks very sharp. The screens of Vivo and Honor are relatively dark. With its 5.17W power consumption achieving 60.1 frames per second, closely followed by Honor, which used 4.43W to reach a nearly identical 59.8 frames per second. Honor's temperature of 39.1 degrees Celsius was the lowest among the group. In contrast, Xiaomi showed more fluctuation in frame rates, lacking the same stability, while Huawei struggled with performance as the temperature and power consumption were less controlled. As the difficulty ramped up in Star Rail, we saw how Huawei's performance faltered. Its frame rate struggled and showed large fluctuations, dropping intermittently when the device couldn't handle the load. iPhone's frame rate curve was relatively stable but slow, with a result of 58 frames per second. Regarding power consumption, Oppo and Vivo, both using the Dimensity 9400, showed high power usage in demanding games like Star Rail, with consumption peaking above 7W, which is a disadvantage for those focused on battery life. The other phones, however, kept their consumption below 6W. When it comes to AI features, iPhone kicked off the trend, heavily promoting AI features in the 16 series launch. However, these features are not yet available in the Chinese version. Meanwhile, the Chinese brands have already rolled out various AI systems such as Vivo's Atomic Guide, Honor's AnyDoor, Xiaomi's Super Xiao AI, and Huawei's Dual Touch Video, all offering proactive services based on user habits, location, and time. The standout feature, however, comes from Oppo, which promoted its one-click query feature. This allows users to simply point the camera at something and ask AI about it, making interactions easier and more intuitive. Honor, on the other hand, focused on proactive service. Its AI can perform tasks like turning off app notifications or disabling automatic renewals, which may not be fast but is certainly useful for addressing common user problems, especially for less tech-savvy people. As for unlocking features, except for the iPhone, all other phones use fingerprint and face unlock methods. Oppo, Xiaomi, and Vivo use a single front camera, while iPhone, Honor, and Huawei use a 3D structured light camera for more accurate and secure face recognition. In conclusion, while all these phones have their strengths, such as performance, and unique features like camera designs, the differences in frame rate stability, power consumption, temperature control, and AI integrations create a unique experience across these devices. Users might prioritize different aspects based on personal preferences and needs. Which used 5.17W of power to achieve 60.1 frames per second. The smartest was Honor, which used just 4.43W of power to achieve a performance of 59.8 frames per second, just behind Vivo. Its 39.1 degrees Celsius temperature was also the lowest. It's clear that it only uses as much power as needed, and doesn't push beyond that. In comparison, Xiaomi had slight fluctuations in frame rates, with less stability than the others. When the difficulty was further increased with Star Rail, I saw Huawei's frame rate curve, and honestly, I felt a bit sorry. Knowing it was already beyond its limit, yet it still tried to push on. When it couldn't take it, it paused for a while, then continued when it had enough power. I hope Huawei's chips, like 5G speeds, can break through limitations. On the other hand, iPhone's frame rate curve looked more like this: I'm tired, I'll take a breath. After a while, I'm tired again, another breath. Overall, it's fairly stable. The final result was 58 frames per second. Vivo and Oppo, using Dimensity 9400, had similar frame rate trends. Both showed a slight dip at first, then briefly maintained full frame rates. But around 17 to 18 minutes, both phones couldn't maintain stability. Xiaomi experienced a tiny dip around 18 minutes, and after 20 minutes, the frame rate couldn't stay stable. Their final results were 57.6 frames per second, 57.3 frames per second, and 56.6 frames per second. Honor reached the highest 59.6 frames per second, with a relatively stable frame rate curve, no dips or frame drops. Its temperature was also only 42.5 degrees Celsius, the second lowest of the group. The lowest temperature was Vivo at 40.5 degrees Celsius. Other phones were mostly around 45 degrees Celsius, with not much difference. In terms of power consumption, both Vivo and Oppo with Dimensity 9400 used over 7.3W for Star Rail, which is quite high. This might be a disadvantage for them.